Hey guys, what is up? This is Yashi here, and I'm going to continue the video that I had before. So if you're just coming to this one, you can go ahead and check that one out. I'll try to link it in annotations right here. But this video is going to be all about the ability pruning section and some other things about the Warlords of Draenor alpha patch notes. And bear in mind, it is alpha, so everything is subject to change. However, that one thing that can be said from patch notes is that there's a general direction and a feel or motif, whatever you'd like to call it. The driving theme is something that doesn't really change after alpha hits and after testing goes through and anything that before live. So whereas there are a few things here that will be balanced later, the whole general feel of things is actually really bad. And that is something that maybe didn't come to light in the last video, which seemed actually pretty positive. And don't get me wrong, there are some positive changes. You can check that video out, and I'm going to put another video about positive changes, trying to stay positive here, because there are good changes in Warlords of Draenor, specifically for PvP and competitiveness. However, this section is extremely toxic, and I know it's alpha and it can change and all that. This is why it's important to know now, so we can say something, because this is when your opinion matters most, is in the alpha before things come out, and we can really change the course of the game if we get enough people to talk about it, because these changes are awful. So I'm going to use a couple classes that I play to accentuate the changes here, but there are definitely some classes that maybe even be better suited to explain the changes. But as for now, it's mainly going to focus around the DK, the Druid, and the Warrior, and kind of some other rogue stuff. But there's a lot to be said for the changes that are happening in the Mage class, and nothing good. RIP in pieces, fire. So with all that being said, let's jump right into DKs. There is something that is being changed. There's a couple things, and I'm going to talk about it from Frost's perspective. And first of all, people are going to say that Frost is already a no-skill class. To them, I say, one, go fuck yourself. And two, that's not entirely true. And this is true of any class. There's a few things that a lot of people don't pick up on, that if you min-max, you're going to easily destroy people that are in your same class or same spec and all that kind of stuff. And Blizz has taken all of these out of Frost DK. So let's talk a little bit about Frost DK functions and talk about these changes. So the changes are anything that gets increased damage from dots already being on the target is being reworked so it doesn't require dots on the target to do full damage. So again, you can see this is quite an obvious skill nerf. If you don't put your diseases on, you don't do enough damage right now. And with cleanses and just timing your cooldowns, when to put your diseases on, min-maxing the amount of time you're using to put your diseases on is really important. I wouldn't say it's that hard, but it's also really important. And removing this completely removes all skill from that whatsoever. It's now just mashing buttons, to an extent. Another thing they're changing is they're making Horn of Winter and also Commanding Shout, or the Warrior Shouts, last for an hour, as opposed to the 5 minutes or whatever. And removing the runic generation and the rage regeneration. So the reason why this is bad is it's another one of those micro cooldowns. For Frost DKs it's 20 seconds, for Warriors it's 1 minute, so it's a little bit different. But there's gaps. When you play Frost to its maximum capability, there is downtime, and there's stuff where you can't do anything. And that is when you're going to put your Horn of Winter in to fill your rotation. When you use Horn of Winter to generate runic power, that is some of those micromanaging things that allows me to be better than some guy who just picked up a Frost DK. Which, to me, I mean, yeah, it sounds really good for casuals and it gets rid of some buttons. But it destroys competitiveness. It does. Because when you remove skill, it destroys competitive. When you remove competitiveness, you destroy PvP. And this is the whole chain of events that with these minor changes are actually doing. And this isn't all the classes, guys. It's not. There might be one or two that it's not in, but this is generally the theme here. And it's really important that this doesn't happen. Now, another thing that is going to show this are the Warrior and the Rogue Sunder Armor. Yeah, it's a really annoying ability to use, so a lot of people don't use it. And at the same time, that's what separates the good players from the bad, and also knowing when to Sunder Armor to save your rage and all that kind of stuff. I don't play Rogue, so I can't really talk about the energy cost and when it's efficient to use it, but as leveling one to 76, I know that it's already a factor. So, all these things being said, I'm not going to talk about every single class, but I'm just using these ones to kind of bring your attention to everything else. They're also doing things to Warriors like removing the damage bonus, pretty much every bonus except for breaking CC for Berserker Rage. And this is another one of those things for those Warriors, like, I love going in arenas and like I'm just capping my ults or whatever, and the second I see a warrior use Berserker Rage for damage, I know it's game over because this guy is completely terrible. He is awful. You can't use that get 24-second get out of fear to do damage unless there's no fears. So this just removes the capability to be bad at warriors, which is something that's important. It's important to be able to be bad. When you're not able to be bad, there's no difference between the best player and the worst player, and there's no competitiveness. And without competitiveness, who cares about PvP? This is a terrible, terrible change. And like I said, I'm not focusing on one ability. There are a bunch of things that support this, but I'm just using some examples. So this isn't just one change, guys. Because one change will if it's bad, it'll get changed through alpha or beta or live. But it's the whole theme. They're just removing all of this from the game, and it's just bad. It's toxic, and we need to get it changed. Now, on top of all of that stuff, there is a bunch of other things to talk about too. So I want to talk about really quick. I want to talk about healing cooldowns because they're actually getting rid of all the mana regeneration cooldowns for every class. Well, not every class. So, healers right now, I'm going to tell you, go reroll Resto Shaman because everyone's going to fucking want one. They've gotten rid of every single mana cooldown in the game except for Mana Tide Totem. And the worst part about it is it's a raid cooldown. So you're not gonna see an RBG without a Resto Shaman. You're not gonna see a raid without a Resto Shaman. Hell, heroic raids probably gonna be stacking the fuck out of Resto Shamans to get more mana Regan. It's just something that's disgusting, and I can't believe that they're doing this. Now again, that is something that could be changed, but it's the whole direction that they're going. So I just want to move off of that because that's not huge, but it's also extremely huge. But it's extremely quick to cover. So now the last thing I want to move on to is tanking, because tanking in PvP, if you've been doing RBGs for a little while, you know that it's a problem. If you're doing some pugs, you want to get your alt, some CR, or just a higher cap or whatever, it's going to take you a long time to find a Guardian. And why do you need you can only have a Guardian tank. There's nothing, you can't tank with anything else. Like if you don't have a Guardian in your group and you queue into a Guardian and it's like a Twin Peaks or Warzone Gulch or something like that, you're going to lose that game 9 times out of 10. You are very unlikely to win that game if you don't have a Guardian. And that's just the way that it is. And they nerfed tanks, and they pretty much allowed no tanks to be in RBGs, except Guardians are so good and have so much AFK mitigation that they're still better than everything else. So unless they change that, this is a really big problem. That's the way the game currently is. So, looking at the Warlords of Draenor alpha patch notes, I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know what? I've been reading through it slowly, and there have been a lot of positive changes to tanking that made more tanks viable in PvP. But these are general changes. I didn't look at any of the class-specific things. So I'm going to look at the ability pruning, and because they remove Symbiosis, and that gives Guardian a lot of things like Bubble or Dispersion. I'm mixing Guardian and Feral here, I know, but it gives them a lot of defensive cooldowns. So instead, they decided to give the Shield Wall, which is, I think, is Survival Instincts, to every single Druid spec, but Guardian goes up, Shield Wall is 50%. So it was 50% for, I think 8 seconds on a 3-minute cooldown, mitigation, of course, which is damage reduction. And now it's going up to 70% damage reduction, going down to 2-minute cooldown, and they get 2 charges. As if that weren't enough. As if double shield wall, technically 3 times more shield wall because they can do it more often, and it's better. if that weren't enough, the only tank to get a tank spec to get a defensive level 100 talent are Guardians, and they get another shield wall, except it's slightly worse. It's a 1-minute cooldown, which is awesome, and it's 50% mitigation, which is what it used to be, but it only lasts for 3 seconds now. But that's a 1-minute cooldown. And then all of the passives they're getting in their perks are also really defensive, and other tanks aren't getting that good of defensive perks. It's absolutely atrocious, and I can't stand it. Having Guardians be the only tank, it's 1 out of 34 specs that you have to have in your RBG group if you want to win a flag carrying map. Period. End of discussion. Period. I'm 100% serious. That's it. And instead of fixing that, they buffed the fuck out of Guardians. It's such a huge buff. And they do absolutely nothing to the other tanks. This is just another argument that shows that Blizzard has complete ignorance to PvP. It seems like they don't play their game, and if they do, they just don't fucking care. I don't understand. And it's not even like it to me logically. I can't think of their PvP designer playing the game. I can't, because it just who would allow this to happen if they love this, if they like to play this game. Not even if they loved it, if they like to play it. Because if you like to play it casually, you'd want the game to be fun. And these changes are not fun. They're getting rid of competitiveness, and yes, they are casual friendly, which is good. I think there need to be casual friendly changes, but that does not mean that you have to nerf skill and once again ascend Guardian to God class and make Resto Shamans a God healer. Like, this is the problem already. So let's talk about a summary here. Guardians are now the God class tank when they already kind of were. Resto Shamans are going to be the God class of healers. And then PvP DPS skill is just going down the toilet. On top of that, there's to talk about, since we're talking about God class motif right here, warriors get slow passively now. Like, what? Their hamstring is a passive when it's on Mortal Strike, which is a 6-second cooldown, which is now affected by global, which is affected by haste. So it's at maximum of 6-second cooldown. It puts hamstring on. It's a 50% slow for 15 seconds. And in PvP, everything is diminished by half. So that goes to a 7-second slow on a 6-second cooldown, and it's their most important DPS move. Like, the best part is warriors are actually pretty good. They got really buffed in 5.4. Now on top of that, they get Shockwave and Blade Storm now. Now, that's not a huge change, but it's nice to add a little shock value to it. The reason why that's not as big is because they're moving Blade Storm for Stormbolt, so now they can't Shockwave and Stormbolt you, which was actually a really annoying problem in 3s. But for RBGs, this change is insane. Like, warrior damage was retarded already, and they're just, like I said, they don't play their game. And I know that shots fired, and this is a really dark video about the future of WoW. But again, if we are responsible and bring this stuff up, then we can possibly change it before it happens, because these changes will drive away all competitive PvP. And even if you're not a high-rated PvPer yourself, but you like most people really like to watch it. So this is the thing you have to consider. Like, as a casual, the game's going to get easier for you, which you're like, okay, this is good. I want the game to be easier. But now there's not going to be any competitive PvP, so you're not going to want to strive for anything, which doesn't really happen as a casual. But you're also not going to have any of the higher rated PvPers to watch. I'm like, man, they're so cool and so good. I wish I was them, but I'm not going to do anything about it, which is the general casual gamer status. Like, a lot of people watch these PvPers, right? I like to watch them as well. And just because you watch them doesn't mean you're trying to strive to be them, right? But you just like to watch it. And when you get rid of competitiveness, there's going to be no more competitive PvP. There's going to be no more competitive PvPers. They're not going to stick around for a game like this. And it's just, the game will just die really quickly. Because, like I've said before, I don't like to be a WoW doomsayer, and don't like to say that WoW's dead, because I don't like to be wrong. And I have said before, the only thing that's going to kill WoW is WoW itself, and that's definitely true. But this is the problem here. So when I said before that there has been 15 months of no content from Siege of Orgrimmar to the release date of Warlords of Draenor, I don't know why you're subbed to the game if you only PvE. If you don't do anything but PvE and you haven't beaten Siege of Orgrimmar yet, 1, I'm sorry. 2, I laugh at you. I'm sorry. But 3, like, I just want to know what you're doing. I don't understand why you would sub to this game for 15 months of no content. Like, after 6 months, that content has to be really boring. I don't understand it. And as a PvPer, you don't have to, like, the game doesn't have to release content for you to enjoy the game. You know what I mean? So, like, you can, like, because every time you play, like, if I duel someone 100 times, 90 of those times, it's going to be a completely different duel. Like, it's just, PvP is constantly changing, and they don't have to do anything. No effort, no money required by Blizz to actually make that content. We make it ourselves. And I think that's why the game has so many subs, because so many people are actually PvPing. But even if you're completely ignorant to that fact, and the subs right now, and there's no PvE content, you have to assume that roughly 50% raid and 50% PvP, and then there's some mix that do both, right? And that's why it equates out to 50-50. This game will lose all of its PvPers. It will lose 50% of, like, that's a bit drastic, but it's going to lose all the competitiveness, which is going to drive a lot of PvPers away. Not all of them. So this is really important, and it's really important that we try to stop it. So I really hope that I've convinced you enough to go out and do something, and just go write on the forums, bring all this stuff up. Don't let it go away, because this game is going to kill itself very quickly. And talking to most of my high-rated friends, they're saying the game's already becoming unfun. Now that changes based on the gear. I told them, like, the game will get more fun as the gear gets better and the changes to resilience and all that balance out. But after these Warlord changes, I can't inspire them anymore. They're already saying the game's not fun. Why would I sub for something that I don't enjoy? And it doesn't seem like it's going to be competitive anymore. So why should I play? So it's already happening 6 months, 8 months before the release comes out. So please say something now, and maybe the game will get better. Thanks for tuning in.